And aptly, we have Anju G Parvathy, who is the Vice President of Research and Solutions at Avtar Group, who is always deep into data, moderating this panel from the panel of leaders who are the champions turning personal stories into systems level action. Ladies and gentlemen, my dear delegates, please put your hands together in welcoming Jilmil Das, Head People and Culture, Yara Fertilizers India Private Limited; Neha Agarwal, Deputy General Manager, HR DEI at Hitachi; Ruby Khan, Head Culture, Learning, Talent and DEI at Luminous Power Technologies for the panel discussion. Over to you, Anju. But before that, I just want to kind of inform the audience that all our esteemed speakers' profile are put together beautifully in a document and uploaded in the chat window. Please feel free to download it and know more about our speakers. Over to you, Anju.
Thank you so much, Lakshmi, for the wonderful context setting and introduction. A very warm welcome to all delegates, our esteemed speakers, and all enthusiasts of the power of I. It's my honor and privilege to welcome all the three panelists, Neha, Ruby, and Chilmil, to this discussion on a very, very pertinent topic: unconventional paths to inclusion, transforming lived experiences into actionables. So, as Lakshmi spoke about, this conversation is going to be a lot about courage, about conviction, and to me, unconventional paths is also about your ability to take those risks and believe and hope in the power of possibilities. As we began the conversation today, we heard Dr. Soundarya talk about saying yes, being yes sayers, right? And sometimes unconventional, bold steps requires us to be those yes sayers. So we are going to dig a little deep into those stories. It's going to be a candid half an hour or so with our esteemed panelists here today. So I welcome you all to join us as we have a ball reflecting, reconnecting, and sharing with you how those paths taken have led to creative and innovative ways of fostering inclusion. With that, I welcome all three of you once again, Ruby, Neha, and Jilman. And I request each of you to share an opening remark each. And the opening remark, I would want each of you to reflect back on moments in your journey that revealed what exclusion feels like on the ground. And let me tell you, exclusion begins very early. I think even when babies are born, based on their complexion, there are comments, they're decided to be included and excluded, right? So very early on in our journey. But some of our learnings that we have had in our very early years can translate to, bold action, reverse action on reversals as we grow up. So my question to you is, has any of your previous experiences of exclusion led you to influence? How has it led you to influence an organizational initiative or policy towards better inclusion? So that's my question. Can I request Ruby to take that question first?
Oh, sure. I don't know.
There is
Am
some
I
issue with
audible?
the audio line. Are we audible, team?
Am I audible?
Yes, you are. Please go on.
Okay, all right. Um, so I can hear an echo. I don't know, is that with everybody or is just that me?
There is an echo. Conference management team, can I request you to help us if this is an audio management aspect? But otherwise, you're fairly audible, Ruby. I think we can get started while the team tries to.
All right. So good afternoon. Thank you so much, and it's such a privilege to be here. Talking about exclusion, I'll give you a real time narrative which happened with me. I joined an organization, and after a couple of days, somebody approached me asking, "Where have you joined? Which function have you joined?" And I told that I've joined HR, and I'll be leading talent, OD, DEI. And this person turned around and said,
I'm
"Oh,
sorry to interrupt you, Ruby. The echo
okay."
is ringing a little loud right now.
Hmm.
Are you connected on two different devices to the conference link?
No, I am not. No,
And it's one single sign-in, right? No two different
that's
browsers.
right. That's right. I am,
Okay.
but now I think I'm okay.
I think everybody else, let's attempt going on mute. Maybe that should help.
Yeah, now is that okay? No. So Anju, why don't you go to other
Let
co-panelists
me
and
do
ask?
that.
Yeah,
Thanks.
do
Thanks,
that.
Ruby, when we try to sort it out. Neha, can I request you to take that question?
Absolutely. I think, Anju, you are very right when you say that exclusion begins very early in everybody's life. But let me take very apt example from the work life. So this is very common when a new joiner joins an organization. So people who are new to the organization on the lunch table or in the meeting rooms or in the candid discussions, they usually feel this pain of exclusion, and as we know that pain of exclusion is equivalent to a physical pain. So yes, I have experienced this kind of exclusion pain myself as well as with the people I'm surrounded with. And when I experienced this, I tried to put my point forward with my management, and the first thing we did was awareness on microaggressions. I believe that awareness on microaggression is very important. Unconscious bias is the next step. So if you understand that even a slightest behavior can pinch someone and can make feel somebody excluded, that's really important. And I think my management is very, very pro in taking up these steps of inclusion, making our organization really inclusion, and we did that very successfully. And that's my experience about exclusion and taking the first step to the journey of inclusion.
Thank you so much, Neha. A very powerful aspect that you brought out front and center, calling out microaggressions, because microaggressions, even though the name carries the term micro, lead to macro exclusion, right? I think the cumulative effect of microaggressions are just, so deep. So more power to you for, taking that bold step. Chilmal, can I request your thoughts on how your experience of earlier exclusion led you to influence organizational policy and initiative?
First of all, very good afternoon. And thanks, Avtar, for this wonderful opportunity to speak today. So it's a fantastic question to start with. And when we talk about exclusion, I think inclusion is just the other side of the coin. So I will touch on the exclusion first. And you have rightly said that, since we start with our childhood till the time like we are here in this world, so we face like some sort of exclusion or the other, and it's very common. I mean, it's a part of our life. And workplace exclusion is something which is again not a very secluded affair. But it's a complex challenge when it comes to workplace because it talks about our individual well-being, organizational success, so both aspects. And if you see, there is a McKinsey study which talks about like 75% of the professionals who have experienced exclusion at certain stages. And of course, there has been a lot of impact on the psychological safety as well as the covering behaviors which generally we individuals tend to do in order to conceal the stigmatized aspects of our entity. So this often leads to a lot of disengagement, reduced productivity, missed opportunity if I'm talking about the career advancements which are coming our way. So but I strongly believe that while individual strategies are definitely important to navigate all of those, and I'm also not an exception. So since the time I joined organization after passing out, so I have also like managed to maneuver through all those nitty-gritties of exclusion, and that has actually shaped me to prepare my workforce, my employees, not to face some sort of exclusion which I have personally faced. So I believe organization also has a critical role in fostering an inclusive workplace culture, so that they can foster a trust, belongingness, and also help building connections by advocating inclusivity. So I do have some example which I would like to share with you since I joined this organization sometime back last 2 years. So when I joined here, I was one of the few members, I would say only 2% of the members who are in the senior management as a female representative. And there has been a policy which was going across, Yara globally. So they're very stringent about discriminations in terms of policies, which was not the case in Yara India. So we started revisiting our policies, and what we figured out that there has been yes, definite deviation in terms of the policies. If I'm talking about the housing and the medical policies, which has not been uniform for people across levels. So we reviewed it and we identified some systemic barriers or the inequities which has been posing hindrance to address the inclusive needs of our workforce. And that's how we created some flexi housing options, such as co-living spaces, accommodation to address various preferences and family structures, also depending on the family sizes. Then uniform office regarding the rooms in OPDs, because everybody is paying the same premium. So why not they are eligible for same sort of room types while hospitalizations, and housing units to also having access for disabilities, including ramps, elevators, adaptable features, then diverse family structures also, keeping in mind the single parent family, same sex couples, and multi generational households. And of course, reasonable accommodation so that they can modify their living space or add some of the support services they feel like. And all these things we have done, keeping in mind that we need to address in a proper manner by circulating those policies and coming up with communication which can give a more transparent view of all those. And most importantly, after all this, we created a employee resource group as well, so that if anybody feel like reaching out regarding their eligibility application process or any sort of support services, they can definitely get in touch with the ERG, which has been meant for that.
Thank you, Jilmil. That was a masterclass in creative inclusion, if I can call it so. Thank you for elucidating it so well, because I think, some of these initiatives need to be spoken about, and it all begins with an individual's thought process influencing that change, right? So it is that inspiration that that individual has that results in inclusion. So that's three I's, I think, which nicely occur in a sequence. I'm informed from my team that Ruby continues to have a tech challenge. Ruby, we will wait for you to join back in the conversation. Meanwhile, I'll go over to my next question to both of you. So I'm going to spin this a little bit, right? And we are here to discuss. I think Lakshmi spoke about having a vulnerable conversation, having a conversation of true stories. So let's get into the a little bit of the good, bad, and the ugly stuff as well. So I'm sure when we try challenging status quo, when we try challenging what is going smooth and what's current, there is a bit of resistance that you may have faced. It could be within the organization, it could be within social structures where you have tried to influence change. Can you share an incident or an instance where your conviction and your preparation helped manage that resistance better? Over to you, Neha.
Sure. So, actually, it's a very apt question, Anju. And let me share a real life experience on this to elaborate it and to make the audience understand this very important part of inclusion in action. And when we are talking about unconventional ways of inclusion, this is very important to understand how this is related to business and the numbers. So, in one of my previous assignment with an engineering firm, I noticed that the innovation pipeline was almost 100% dependent on live rapid fire ideation sprints. And participation in those high energy whiteboard sessions carried close to 25% weight in the annual performance scorecard of the R&D team, research and development team. Now, the system was working absolutely wonderful for majority of employees. Big sticky notes, buzzers, time round felt dynamic and so inclusive because everybody was in the whole business of showing, putting up things, ideating and everything. But what was invisible was how that format was biased against employees who were maybe in the process of quiet reflection to generate ideas, or maybe they take time to share their ideas, or maybe they are introvert. And this was resulting in log of almost zero ideas for such employees. Even those employees who had delivered good number of worthy patents. So when I took up this to the management from the lens of empathy and unconscious biasness in the system, and we wanted to include every kind of mindset in the organization, every kind of personality in the organization in this ideation journey, we redesigned this evaluation criteria and introduced two things. First, the two-step sprint ideation methodology, wherein first step, you do a quiet reflection and then there is a live debate to put your point forward. Everybody would ideate and then come to the conclusion. Second, the evaluation matrix was changed from the number of ideas shared to the success of the patents. How many patents are getting successful? And just with these two changes, trust me, we accomplished almost 65% more unique ideas, and patent applications rose up to 50% in just 2 quarters. Plus, the very important heart part of inclusion, employee satisfaction score, jumped 35% for the question, I can contribute creativity. So this single, very small adjustment sparked the underrepresented category of employees in a way from neurodiversity lens or from the empathy lens, and that turned the invisible exclusion into a systemic redesign that now defines how business invents, collaborates, and measure performance. So this was the experience that made even the business feel the power of inclusion.
That's simply brilliant, Neha. And I think the researcher in me is truly inspired by the way you put together those matrices, right? So in terms of how you were able to, kind of call that out, even when it was working for the majority. I think inclusion is all about that, right? It's not about it just working for the majority, and it having a clear business impact and scientific innovative impact. Kudos to you, and thanks for choosing to share with us on this panel. Ruby, delighted to have you back. Thank you so much. And I move over to you with my question on the opening remark, which is basically around your experience of exclusion having influenced an organizational initiative towards better inclusion. Over to you, Ruby.
So, Anju, I was sharing my experience where I joined an organization, and a couple of days later, somebody asked me, which role have you joined, which function have you joined, and I just shared the details. The person turned around and said, "Oh, are you a diversity candidate?" That's when I decided I will not drive diversity like this as a DEI advocate. And it was hard hitting. It was hard hitting because it is unfortunate to see organizations driving DEI as metrics, and you can't do that. There's a context of an organization, and that context of an organization is so pivotal. We talk about actions, but do we actually speak to people and understand what does DEI mean for them? I'm sorry to say, but many a times I see organizations doing men versus women, Gen X versus Gen Z, and that's not the case. That's not how you drive inclusion in an organization, because there are people who feel cornered and say, excuse me, we don't feel included within the system. And I'm sorry, I will go back to research because I took 7 years to complete my doctorate, but this is an interesting one. Edelman's research found that 76% companies want to recommit and not restart. How many of us are provoking difficult conversations? How many of us are addressing the challenges of our people and employees of why do we need inclusion? Where is it coming from? Right? And I take a lot of pride in saying that we address these fundamental questions and concerns. And that's where inclusion begins. Inclusion begins when you include challenging conversations, when you include people who have concerns and who do not look at diversity, equity, and inclusion the way you look at it.
Very, very powerful, Ruby. And I think the phrase that struck me was recommit, right? And we are living through times where it's not only about your commitment to inclusion, it is about recommitment of every individual invested in the cause who truly understands what it means to actively take people together. And it's beyond matrices and numbers. As much as I am a data lover, I am a lover, huge lover of stories and how human connection can inspire and influence inclusion. So thank you for choosing to share that. Jilmal, I come over to you to discuss how that particular aspect of resistance, because some of the initiatives that you spoke about, right, and were very specific affirmative actions taken towards including persons with disabilities or say single parents or same-sex couples. So was there any resistance in terms of policy shift? If so, how was that managed at that point? Over to you, Jilman.
Yeah, so Anju, I belong to a organization, which was under the regime of Indian conglomerate who has been running the show till 2018, and after that, like it was taken over by Nordic MNC. So what I could see after joining is there are multi-generational workforces who have actually undergone transition, but from not from a very organic level. And we are actually facing a very culturally open marketplace. The old approaches in terms of the diversity, equity, and inclusive practices, so that was little like falling short of the mark or the expectation which Yara globally has from India. So there has been transition, like from considering DEI, who consider more from a social justice standpoint. If you see Tata's, they are more from social justice. They offer these sort of practices, and whereas the international group, so they do it more from a business imperative, where CEO has got his own target of enforcing these DEI practices across the organization. So I could understand that there has been certain, subset probably, or the leadership development, which might have been done with a deficit mindset, or somehow executed probably with a very ambivalent view of diversity. So it is definitely essential that we relook and try to reframe diversity as probably a critical business strategy, and not so-called the nice to have or non-essential, but as a non-essential benefit. So last year, we conducted a leadership assessment sometime around July. And after that, after we got all the metrics with us, so we thought that we should introduce a change management approach to build a workplace which talks about cultural inclusion also. And what was the outcome? We wanted to actually address the whole sustainability and scalability. So these insights actually helped the leadership to assess the current state, and we also identified the core areas for transformation. As you were asking me, were there resistance? Yes, of course, there were resistance, because every change actually goes through certain sort of resistance. And it was not from the leadership team alone, it was across generations, it was across various level of employees. So we had to expand access to leadership development to various levels of the management and created accountability. So while the assessment was also done to understand the level of cultural maturity for the organizational structure, the strategy, the segments, or the systems or the solutions, But in order to have these structural barriers, we had to address it at various levels, say from early careers to the executives, so that the entire change gets facilitated through growth and personalization. So, one activity that we did immediately thereafter to have a clear goal and accountability in place, so that every leader can have the space to examine their own behaviors also, and what sort of unconscious biases they have, which can hinder the diversity of thought, and maybe that limit organizational diversity overall, I'm saying, for the unit.
That's
And we also
absolutely.
started off with leadership coaching, so it helped the leaders understand what sort of a safe space they can have for their contextual learning, maybe
Absolutely agree.
experimentation, and challenge them to move from their own comfort zone to a kind of what I can say, a learning zone. So they learned how their identity influences the other leaders, how their behaviors are impacting the overall organization. And parallelly, we also release data, so regular data on various diversity matrices like hiring, retention, then discrimination complaints as well, check-ins, because we have just done away with the performance rating
Beautiful,
since 2023.
Chilman. Yeah, sorry to interrupt you there. I think again a steady download of best practices in terms of breaking down. I think the handling challenges with atomicity, right? So if there is resistance, how do we then break it down and ensure that within pockets that resistance is managed? I heard that very clearly from you. And at Avatar, we run India's largest diversity benchmarking studies called the Best Companies for Women in India and Most Inclusive Companies Index. And these are matrices that we seek. And the idea is to help organizations break it down,
Yeah.
help organizations look at strategy holistically. So thank you so much for sharing that. I'm sure our audience is actively listening in. So, as closing remarks, I'm going to ask all of you two hacks that each of you have towards active listening. And how have you ensured as leaders you promote active listening to ensure a more inclusive experience? Any unconventional paths would also be great, a delight to listen to. Ruby, can I request you to take that?
Well, but I will take maybe a minute more than what you expect. Inclusion is driven at two levels. One is at a systemic level through policies, practices, and initiatives, but at the same time, it is also at an individual level. This is a journey of mindset. It is not a journey of dashboard. While dashboard is a great reference point to look at and see where you want to go. Also, it also depends what is the context of your organization, Anju, right? A tech company will have a very different context than a manufacturing organization or an energy solution business. I would like to give you a narrative here. I met a UX designer. She met with an accident, and she was a UX designer. She was doing great. So she, due to this accident, she went through a facial paralysis, of course, that deformed her face and difficulty in speaking. After that, wherever she applied, she was not able to get through. And I really wonder how has that to do with her ability to do designing. And I still feel we have a long way to go. To answer your question, if you want to bring authentic listening, you need to build allyship, which I don't see a lot of times. I don't see somebody belonging to an LGBTQIA community having a confidant in the organization whom this person can go and just share his or her heart out. At a team level, it is psychological safety, but at an individual level, allyship is extremely critical to promote listening and make sounding boards within the organization. That's sustainability. Otherwise, and that will eventually show in numbers, Anju. I don't need to put diversity target in my manager's KPI. The moment I do a sensitization session, promote difficult conversations, I know the fourth time my manager will look at 5 CVs which represent diversity in one form or other. And therefore, I say it's a journey, it's a mindset. You look at an HBR article which says that DI has 5 stages of maturity. It's an organization who has to decide which stage are they into and where do they want to land.
Very beautifully put, and I think you've brought a very uncomfortable truth right center stage, right? The connect between your ability and what you're judged for. So thanks for sharing that even while we spoke about active listening. Over to you, Neha. How does active listening resonate with you?
So Anju, since we are short of time, I'll just squeeze my response to 5 words. I'm a fan of five, and trust me, for me, diversity is this five numbers. So when you squeeze this five in a fist, that becomes inclusion, and that gives you the power of belonging. So I'll just give you 5 words for me that defines active listening, right? Um, Although I just realized that I need to add allyship maybe, so it will go to six after Ruby said that allyship is
It's
important for
it's the
active
sixth
listening.
edition of Power of Five,
Yes,
Neha, so we can
yes.
have six.
So
Yeah.
the 5 A's are: first is accessibility. Are you making sure that you are giving enough multiple channels to people to voice out their concerns, voice out their opinion? Maybe it's digital, written, in person, town hall, meetings, different channels. Second is accountability. Once you hear them, you create an accountability center for them, right? You choose a leader. Okay, these are the concerns jotted down. You create the loop, and then you create a leader to create the follow up to take it forward. Once you create that accountability center, the third A comes is allocation. Allocate the suitable resources, allocate the suitable empowerment, and understand all of these A's are binded by one P, which is psychological safety. So we have to make sure at every stage that people are free to voice out their concerns. They are free to take the ownership, to leave the ownership, to do the changes in the allocations and accountability. Once you allocate the resources, fourth A says alignment. Make sure that whatever you are hearing, whatever the active listening is giving you inputs, it should align with business strategy. It should align with your core value and the major theme of your business. And the fifth A is audit. Once you circle back, once you allocate accountability, once you are done with the alignment, make sure that you circle back to the people, making sure that this is heard, this is what we do, this is the progress, this is the tracking, here's the leader, and this is what we are going to next. So that is how you audit. So, and definitely then the sixth A comes in allyship with Ruby. Right. So for me, active listening is all about psychological safety being primed, and then giving these 5 or 6 A to the people to make them feel heard, valued, and respected. That's how you make sure that your people get that sense of belonging. That yes, I said something, I was heard, my contribution was taken in. It is taking leaps and bounds or baby steps on progress. And yes, I belong to this place where I am feeling heard and being contributing.
Beautiful, Neha. I think you've just cleared the path, and as I see it, allyship is the outcome, and all the 5 A's that you mentioned are action verbs that can get us to that outcome. Beautifully put. Thank you for sharing that. Chilmil, I come over to you with your closing remark on, the active listening piece and how that resonates with you. Over to you.
I believe the other panelists have already covered, so nothing left for me, but I'll still try to, maybe say a point or two here. I believe genuinity and your transparency, your conviction to listen to the person. So maybe for me, it's like 3 A's. So, wherein I would also talk about alignment, because alignment is something which is very important because it needs self exploration, self awareness. So when I'm listening to somebody, so I need to be very active, and I should be in a position to offer solution to that individual even if I'm not. So I should provide a pathway to that person so that he or she can approach the right forum to get a solution therefrom. The second would be amplification. So amplification is something like, we hold each other accountable and support also at individual level and also at the team level. And I believe like every relationship wherein we co-create this sort of inclusion journeys. And the third point will be accentuation. So we need to be role model to each other to emulate. So being credible in our own space, wherein we really need to walk our talk. If we are in a journey where the other person and I can walk together, so then we will be able to reach the destination of creating a much more inclusive workspace. So that's all from me.
Brilliantly put, Chilmil. I'm sure the research team from Avtar who is documenting this particular session has a lot of ways to take care of. Thank you for sharing that. I think authenticity, you so very importantly brought it. That's where active listening begins. Because I once remember one of my teammates, called me out, and she was very specific. So she told me, see, sometimes during telephonic conversations, the hello appears very distracted. Yes, you get into the conversation, you offer the right advice, and I have largely a distributed team, people who work from different parts of the country. But from your hello, I sense whether you are actually in the conversation, you are in the middle of something important, and you're not able to spend time for that conversation. So that hello helps me decide whether I should continue the conversation with you or I should dial back in later. So it's about that authenticity, right? And it was a reflection. Every time now, when I say hello, I reflect. I'm like, okay, am I actually saying hello or not? I won't pick that call if I'm not in a space to take that hello. So it brought, I think this conversation has been just delightful. Thank you, panelists, for investing your
you.
time and your
Thank you.
inputs with us. Lakshmi, do we have time? I saw that there are a couple of audience questions.
Yes.
Do we have time
Yes,
for one?
Anju. Quickly, Anju, we can take one question, but before that, I really, really want to thank each one of you for this authentic conversations, and to you, Anju, as someone who leads India's largest workplace culture study. You spoke about BCWI, someone who leads the study. So you brought in that ability to blend analytical rigor with empathy, making the session truly special, Anju. Yeah, there is one question, Anju, from the audience.
Yeah.
Musarat Jahan, yeah, is asking us what barriers still exist that prevent full participation or advancement inclusion agenda at workplace.
I'll put a number to it, that number one barrier according to each of you.
I think
Um,
psychological safety. Because
okay.
it is easier said than done. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is easier to say that we are a psychological safe workplace, but are we really making our workplaces psychological safe for everyone? Not for few,
Hmm.
for everyone. And then leadership commitment comes really, really as the base to it. Although
Thank
there
you.
are multiple barriers as of now, but yeah, I'll stick to two and
Thank
let
you.
others
Thanks.
speak. Yeah.
Thanks, Neha. Over to you, Ruby and Jilmil.
Anju, first of all, to your point on authenticity, authenticity comes with a lot of vulnerability, and hence it is very difficult. That's one. The biggest challenge is, I think that all the panelists here will be the CXOs and CEOs. I think we will arrive on diversity, equity, and inclusion. We would not need DI roles in an organization if the leadership team and the business says, listen, I need people who represent the society and the community at large. So I think it's business sponsorship. We don't want to drive it as an HR. It's business who needs to drive it.
Brilliant. Thank you, Ruby. Over to you, Jilmil.
Yeah, of course. I think I will echo what Ruby mentioned. So it is not necessary for the HR to drive this whole DI agenda. It's about the business, and if they find that DI is, of course, in the agenda for the business, so it will be inculcated. Coming back to the barrier, so I believe along with psychological safety, I would also say that trust is a major issue, though it goes hand in hand. But I think a team member need to trust his manager, colleagues, or the leader at large, and then only like we'll be able to create that psychological space at workspace. So the trust, if it is broken, it's like a broken glass. So something which we will not be able to carry forward, that sort of confidence or the communication relationship. So trust is very important.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jilmil. Thank you, Neha. Thank you, Ruby. It's been an absolute delight hosting this panel. With that, I hand over the session back to Lakshmi. Thank you so much, everyone.
Anju, if you may allow, I would just like to request this grand forum. Please don't consider inclusion and diversity initiatives as an HR decor term. It is imperative to business. And the moment you will start realizing its importance, not just in personal life and professional life, but also in the strategic and data terms, you will understand the real need of it. And then you don't need any inclusion officer or DI officer, as Ruby said. You will be yourself a DI and inclusion champion. So, my request to everyone is please start analyzing it from your personal lens and then take it forward at professional lens. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Neha. Thank you, Jilmal. Thank you, Ruby. And
Thank you
thanks
so
a
much.
lot, Anju.